We welcome now Janet Napolitano. She's the former Secretary of Homeland Security, and she's out with a new book, the author of How Safe Are We? Homeland Security Since 9/11. One of the key issues of national security debate here in the U.S. amongst the two parties is essentially the border. And in fact, just within the last couple of minutes, President Trump has tweeted about the border, threatening to close it down. He says, "The Democrats have given us the weakest immigration laws anywhere in the world. Mexico has the strongest." He goes on to tweet that if Mexico doesn't immediately stop all illegal immigration coming into the United States through our southern border, I will be closing the border or large sections of the border next week. Your reaction to this latest tweet from the president saying that he could shut down the border next week?
Well, shutting down the border with our number 2 trading partner would be at a minimum unwise and would have lots of economic impacts. Look, the border is a zone. You can't just seal it off. We're not a country that's like a Tupperware container where you can pop a lid down on it. And what we need to have is a border strategy, not a wall, but a strategy that encompasses manpower and technology and strengthening how we actually process that traffic through the ports of entry.
So in terms of this latest threat from the president and this latest call on Mexico to do something, particularly as it pertains to drug trafficking, from your vantage point, is the president within his legal authority to shut down the border as he has just threatened to do within the last couple of minutes via Twitter?
You know, I do not know the answer to that question. I think it's highly questionable whether he has unilateral authority to do it. But whether or not he has the power to do it, the question is, should he do it? And do the circumstances require that he do so? And I would say, no, they do not. And what he really ought to do is flood the border zone with the rule of law. Get some more immigration court judges on board. Get them down to the southwest border so that those asylum cases can be processed in accord with our laws and with our values.
Secretary Napolitano, in your book, you talk about the idea of the border wall being a sort of a distraction from the major issues. How much do you worry still today about the possibility of a catastrophic 9/11 style attack hitting the United States, and where would it come from? Who even has the capacity to pull that off?
So I think that the kind of attack we saw in 9/11, we virtually eliminated the possibility that somebody coming from a foreign land could go to flight school in the United States, get on an aircraft, weaponize it, and fly it into buildings such as the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. I think our greater risks come from our cybersecurity and the risk of a cyber-style attack that results in a loss of services, banking, transportation, emergency services, all happening simultaneously. I actually think there are significant security risks associated with global warming and climate change, something that we rarely, if ever, talk about.
Obviously, we're speaking on the week that the Mueller report came out via, Attorney General William Barr's letter. A lot of talk in there, sort of affirming the finding of the U.S. Intelligence Committee back in January 2017 that the Russians did, sort of muddle and meddle in the United States election. How worried are you about a similar style mischief being made in the 2020 campaign?
Oh, I think the Russians did more than meddle. They were all over our 2016 election. They were hacking the Clinton campaign, releasing emails. They were putting misleading and false information onto social media, all to advantage Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. And I'm not sure that we have done enough to make sure that doesn't happen again in 2020. And this needs to be a key national focus.
You've talked about climate change in your book, as you mentioned earlier. It's become such a polarized issue. Obviously, Democrats talking about a Green New Deal, Republicans having great fun caricaturing those ideas as taking away our cars and our hamburgers both. How is this country going to actually have a serious debate on climate change without becoming completely politicized and completely sidelined?
You know, I actually think the American people need to take a step back and say, what does climate change mean to the individual American? It means if you live in coastal areas, you're going to see rising sea levels. You're going to see more landfall hurricanes. You're going to see a greater number and intensity of tornadoes. In the West, you're going to see drought, drying up the forests and resulting in extreme wildfire. That affects people where they live. And the question is, what are we going to do to reduce the rate of global warming, but also what are we going to do to adapt to the warming that's occurred?